Hello, everyone, and welcome into Senior Living Live. My name is Melissa. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us here this afternoon for our webinar called The Power of Music Therapy. We've got a lot of really great and interesting information to share with you in this hour together. As is the case in each of our webinars, we of course want you to be a part of the conversation. So in order to do that, anytime during the presentation, you can scroll down to the bottom of your screen there on the right, where it says Q&A. Feel free to type out your questions there at any point in time during this webinar. We will be happy to read those off to our presenters at the end of their presentation. Just remember, all audio and video lines will be muted. Now, we've got two guest presenters today. We love that, both from the George Center based in Roswell, Georgia. We've got Allison Lockhart and Hannah Reinhardt. Ladies, you look beautiful today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. The webinar is all yours.
Fantastic. We're so incredibly excited to be here with everyone today. Like she said, my name is Hannah Reinhardt. I'm the executive director of the George Center Foundation based out of Roswell. We are a 501c3 nonprofit who's trying to improve access to music therapy services for those who might not otherwise be able to afford them. I'm a neurologic music therapist. I've been working with the George Center now for 6 years. And we have been working with Arbitraris for much longer than that. So we're excited to have the opportunity to present with them today.
Yes, absolutely. And like she said as well, my name is Allison Lockhart, and I am the assistant director of the George Center Foundation. I have been with the George Center for almost 4 years now, but I've been practicing in music therapy for over 7 years. So we are just so incredibly excited to talk to you all today about the power of music therapy and hopefully give you some good tidbits on how music therapy could help improve your lives or the lives of your loved ones.
Forgive us for technical difficulty. It's already given us a hard time.
There we go. So the question that people with disabilities and their families are asking themselves, and the question we help them answer is this: how can you survive with this diagnosis? When it comes to neurologic injuries and diseases, the types of variations are just as diverse as the people experiencing them. So the CDC reports that a quarter of all American adults have a physical or intellectual or sensory disability. That's 61 million of us, and the number of kids in special education is rising too. Disability impacts all of us. So it's not surprising that this is one of the most dynamic areas of science. The last few years of research and breakthroughs have appended decades of beliefs and practices. You know, historically, the focus is on expectation. However, when the condition is diagnosed, whether it's autism or stroke or dementia, you set a ceiling of what's expected, and then you work hard toward that goal with positive and negative reinforcement, with lots of time and effort. And the idea is that some people will achieve it, some people will get close, and unfortunately, some will miss the mark. That's just the reality that's out there right now. And it seems like a logical approach, but there have been numerous breakthroughs in neuroscience that have disrupted this model. Some of them involve cutting-edge technologies that have given us new access and visibility into the brain. Now we can see what parts of the brain light up in certain situations. There's also greater insights and new understanding of disorders and their roots in the brain and the body. You know, what if we thought a certain problem was really cognitive and related to thinking, but it is actually a sensory issue? So in this expectation world, science is showing that often the wrong things are being treated, and individuals are receiving the wrong types of treatment. In fact, language disorders in children are often misdiagnosed as developmental disorders, and millions of adults who seek outpatient medical care are also misdiagnosed. So these numbers are staggering. And part of what makes finding the right treatment so hard are these dual diagnoses, like overlap of developmental disorders and mental health disorders. So just think about what all this means for individuals and their families. It can lead to frustration that their efforts aren't paying off. It can lead to depression and isolation. If you have a disability, you are 5 times more likely to report mental distress. And it can lead to financial drain. So according to the Journal of Managed Care, the average Medicare cost of dementia is 3 times higher than Medicare costs for seniors without dementia. And the Alzheimer's Association estimates that the lifetime cost of Alzheimer's and dementia care to be an astounding $341,840. So let's take a look at the science, because the science is finally showing us why these approaches fall flat for so many. The thing is, it's not about setting expectations, it's about building foundations for future success. And building those foundations require you to treat the whole person in harmony. So what does this actually mean? It means that there are 3 things you need to do. You need to connect the brain by rewiring neural connections. You need to compose the mind by building emotional scaffolding, by creating structure for those emotions. And you need to synchronize the body by cueing rhythmic movement. The good news is there is groundbreaking science that does this and more, and it's the neuroscience of music. And it's unlocked a whole new realm of possibilities for many populations, including those with Alzheimer's and dementia. This approach creates the opportunity for perfect harmony between the individual and their internal and external world, and their families and communities.
So let's talk more about how music works in a facility setting. Structural differences in the brain can lock you into behaviors that you can't control. Take stroke, for example. The resulting brain damage can prevent you from speaking. If you have autism, you may flap your hands, even if your teacher tells you to stop. And with Alzheimer's or dementia, you're working against a timetable where areas of your brain are going dark and are no longer accessible through the neural networks you've established and practiced throughout a lifetime. But what if you could connect the brain by rewiring those neural connections? With the George Center Foundation, you can use neurologic music therapy techniques to work around areas of the brain that have been disconnected or have gone dark. With neurodegenerative diseases, we know that the brain is the root of the issue. So our primary goal is to connect the brain. When the networks that we once relied upon for our daily living are fraying or dying, we are in the business of creating new pathways and finding different routes to old information before it's gone. Next, but just as important, we need to compose the mind. We've recently learned of a secondary diagnosis to many brain dysfunctions called motor emotional dyskinesia. When you boil it down, motor emotional dyskinesia means that if you're dysregulated emotionally, if you're upset or you're mad or you're sad, then you're going to be dysregulated in your motor function. And our motor controls everything. Finally, we need to synchronize the body. Music provides the temporal structure and rhythmic cue for all physical processes. When we give the body these foundations for movement, we improve its ability to complete tasks of daily living. There are a lot of ideas around how to treat a person with a neurodegenerative disease, but at the George Center, we believe in treating the whole person in harmony. We believe through research and practical application that you truly cannot isolate the brain. And instead of ignoring parts that are superfluous to our main purpose, we engage the whole brain, the whole mind, and the whole body. So for example, you can free trapped memories. Losing your memory can feel like you're losing yourself. It's alarming if you can't remember why you ran an errand, or if you forget how to get home, or if you don't recognize your own family member. With music therapy, you can use aural cues to free trapped memory or reinforce new ones. Then you have new strategies to maintain your relationships, keep yourself safe, and feel more empowered. One technique that's especially helpful is called musical mnemonics training. Your therapist uses songs to help with recall. For example, you might create a song about your son that helps you recognize him when he visits or recall memories about him. Or you might create a song about your morning routine to help you remember the steps. The therapy uses mechanisms like chunking information and repetition to circumvent damaged parts of the brain. I was fortunate enough to work with one man for several years. His wife was present in every session because she said it gave her the most of him, of anything he did during the week. Prior to starting music therapy, I received reports from his wife, his children, and his caretakers that all he would do is sit in his room all day. He didn't want to eat, engage in conversation, or participate in any of the offered activities. And then they started music therapy. And in music therapy, Gene was a different man. The music connected parts of his brain that had lost touch long ago. With these connections, he was able to recognize the song from his wedding day, and even once initiated a dance with his wife where he was even calling her by name. We used musical mnemonics training to create a song that his wife sang with him every morning to maintain her name and the names of their children. When he was using little language at the end of his life and he wasn't responding to family, all they would have to do is sing the first 3 words of the song, and Jane would sing the entire thing. And he's able to sing about his loved ones and a special memory associated with each one. On good days, that was even accompanied by further memories that they were able to talk about together. Through rerouting information in the brain, we were able to connect. Another technique is called oral motor respiratory exercises. Often in therapies, you're working to rehabilitate, and in neurodegenerative diseases, we're mostly working to maintain and slow the disease. Whether you have a neurodegenerative disease or not, one of the best ways to keep a skill is to practice it, and we all know that. And with older populations, this can sometimes be difficult. There can be and is a high comorbidity of depression and general sadness and a lack of desire to complete difficult tasks due to fear of failure and embarrassment. This sometimes means that traditional ways of exercising are turned down or ignored altogether. In neurologic music therapy, we provide a non-invasive alternative that allows clients to engage in physical and emotional exercises they might have otherwise not tried. In this video is my friend Jeanette. When I entered this session, she was taking shallow breaths. She was not speaking at an audible volume from lack of breath control, and she was non-responsive to my or her caretaker's entrance. Through a series of oral motor and respiratory exercises, Jeanette was able to regulate and pace her breath, engage and respond to reciprocal interactions, and complete sung phrases at more than audible volumes, as you'll see. More so, she was able to translate the activity further, as this was a song that she sang with both her son and her grandson when they were little. While at this stage, she was unable to recall their names independently, she was able to recall a memory, which improved not only her quality of life, but the quality of life of her family.
So like we just practiced, sounded so good. You gonna hold that part in your hand? All right, you put it between your lips. Ready? Good job, Jeanette. You know that song you were just playing? You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Beautiful. I loved that.
So one piece of treating the whole person in harmony is to connect the brain. You also have to compose the mind, because from a clinical perspective, the brain and mind are 2 different worlds. Think about it this way. When we study the brain with neurology, and we study the mind with psychology. Your state of mind is the baseline for cognition. This takes us back to the emotional motor dyskinesia we talked about earlier. You have to be in a good headspace before you can think clearly. And as a reminder, the comorbidity between Alzheimer's and dementia with depression is incredibly high. That's one reason occupational or physical therapy can be a struggle at times. If you keep coming in upset or depressed, you might get referred out to a psychotherapist. But that's not a perfect solution either. Medication can help bring you down from a heightened state, but it doesn't help you express and work through it. Talk therapy can help with that, but it's hard for people who have trouble communicating verbally. And if you can't express and control your emotions, you'll keep struggling with impulsive decision-making and aggression and anxiety. And basically those negative thoughts follow those negative emotions, and that limits your ability to participate in society. But what if you could compose the mind by building emotional structure? With the George Center, you can use music therapy to process and regulate emotion. It starts in individual sessions and it culminates in group programs where you get to relate to others. This kind of work is powerful in a group setting because music speaks where words fails. The outside world can become distance for residents of nursing homes and assisted living facilities. But with our intergenerational preschool program, you can build friendships across generations. You can help dissolve feelings of loneliness and isolation with the innocence, joy, and playfulness that children bring to any atmosphere. And the resulting boost in mood actually leads to better health and longer life expectancies. And the children get to absorb wisdom and social cues from their grand friends, as we call them, while learning that aging is normal and nothing to fear. So that is why we take preschoolers into assisted living facilities and help them make music together. So on any given day, you might find us practicing Somewhere Over the Rainbow using sign language, playing instruments to Frank Sinatra, or singing holiday classics. But in fact, research in music-based intergenerational programming has shown benefits such as improved cross-age attitudes and cross-age interactions between younger and older generations. Intergenerational programs enrich the lives of participants while reaching across the perceived barriers of generational divides. So we treat many individuals, but groups are also a big part of what we do. And I'm going to let Lillian and then our friends from CBS 46 tell you a little bit more about our intergenerational preschool program.
I'm amazed by this program. It makes our day. We have many things to enjoy and have a good time with each other, but these young children make our day, and we are blessed by having them in our presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's good for our morale. And we learned that we got to be patient with like little children.
Yeah.
The older we get.
Yes.
But this is a wonderful program.
And it's too.
Oh, I think it's good for them too. They get to learn about growing old around their grandmothers and grandparents and everything. So it's just a wonderful program. Well, I don't have grandchildren because I lost 2 teenage children, a son at 16 and a daughter at 18. So I'm enjoying other people's grandchildren. And these are just an extension, and I have more grandchildren with this group. So it's a blessing to me.
And you can tell how much they love you too.
Well, I hope so, and I love them.
So that was Miss Lillian, who participated in one of our intergenerational preschool programs. And we're going to turn it over to another video that was done on CBS 46. It's going to show you a little bit of live action and interactions between the children and their grand friends.
Anchor Gravir Dinza shows us how this unique music program is helping seniors.
Just a few minutes till showtime, and these tiny performers are warming up their voices.
Dashing through the snows, and when we're soaked in sleigh, through the fields we go, laughing all the way.
5-year-old Quinn isn't who you'd normally expect to see center stage at an assisted living home for the elderly. But she's part of a preschool group that has a standing gig here at Arbor Terrace at Crabapple.
Listen, I like to watch the kids. I don't care what they do. They're adorable and make you laugh.
It's the music that bonds them, but the impact is much greater, says Jamie George, director of the George Center for Music Therapy.
We know that with music, you have melody and rhythm to help recall information.
For seniors receiving memory loss care here, the musical interaction can help trigger moments of their lives they haven't been able to remember for years.
And with older adults, we have research that shows that while even with Alzheimer's and dementia, memories are lost, but music memories aren't. They're stored differently in the brain.
George started the Giving Tree Intergenerational Preschool program 5 years ago. Studies show socializing across generations delays mental decline and decreases the risk of disease in seniors. The children gain something too.
And it's really about learning about older adults and aging, not being afraid of aging, and having those friendships and being kind to others, which are really important concepts for young children to learn.
Twice a week, these preschoolers and their grand friends, like Joanne Pippin, get together to make music. They sing, play instruments. There's even interpretive dance.
It improves your week. You're going to get a laugh out of everything, because no matter what they say, it comes out funny.
Today is the culmination of several months of rehearsal, a performance for the family and friends of these Goddard Crabapple preschoolers.
You can take an almost nonverbal resident and you can get conversations out of them afterwards.
Engagement director Stephanie Mock says these seniors come to life the minute these preschoolers walk through the door.
They're not interested in the bingo or the armchair travels or the shopping trips or things like that. But you bring the kids in and it's just whoosh. They just swarm in and they love it.
The Giving Tree program is currently at 9 assisted living facilities here in Metro Atlanta. For CBS 46 News, I'm Gurveer Dinsa.
Really is a great idea, as you were saying.
Yeah.
How lovely that is, and they kind of both get to learn from each other.
Sure. I mean, it's just the best of both worlds, and just to see everyone so happy, right?
And all dressed up, some of those kids in their Christmas finest. That was the cutest.
So music therapy can help you change your mindset and rewire your brain. So now let's see how the body plays into treating the whole person in harmony. Your sense of self-worth is tied to your ability to do everyday tasks independently. But many individuals with neurologic diagnoses struggle to maintain skills like walking or feeding oneself. Many adults are actively fighting a decline. You can imagine how more demoralizing it can be to practice walking when you used to run marathons, or when people assume your physical limitations mean you have low intelligence. Motor challenges like these often start in the brain. Problem with your proprioceptive system and vestibular systems can interfere with your body's awareness. You might end up using too much force or leaning on walls for balance or shuffling your feet even. But what if you could synchronize the body by cueing rhythmic movement? With the George Center, you can use neurologic music therapy techniques to help people manage their daily tasks. Sometimes the reason you can't move a certain way is because your body has no awareness of the time frame that it will take. So let's say you want to walk with a heel-toe step, or you want to extend your arm fully. With techniques like auditory perception training, you can break each movement into parts, and you can map those parts to a rhythmic structure. This means that you can strengthen your brain-body connection. After enough practice, you can remove the rhythmic cues and execute movements on your own. The key to auditory perception training is figuring out the right stimulus and structure for the movement. Your therapist will provide a prompt to the body the whole way along. Rhythm is great in that way. The beat gives markers for when the next action needs to happen. We all time our movement to rhythm at a subconscious level. With music therapy, you're just making those cues explicit. You see this a lot in diagnoses like Parkinson's disease. Because of music's ability to connect the brain, compose the mind, and synchronize the body, we developed Singing with Parkinsons, a choir that addresses the skills on a weekly basis. It's a group that we're really proud of, and here's the director of our Parkinsons Choir explaining why.
It is estimated that 60,000 individuals are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease each year in the U.S. alone, and that by the year 2020, nearly 1 million individuals in the United States will have Parkinson's. The neurologic effects of Parkinson's disease include impaired speech, halting gait, slowed movement, and emotional disturbances. Research shows that neurologic music therapy interventions in particular can effectively address these symptoms. Each Singing with Parkinson's rehearsal is led and accompanied by a board-certified music therapist with additional certification in neurologic music therapy, and each rehearsal is designed to specifically address the symptoms of the participants. Through the use of techniques like vocal intonation therapy, oral motor respiratory exercises, pattern sensory enhancement, and therapeutic singing, we address areas of need such as breath support, articulation, vocal production, and bradykinesia. And we make some beautiful music too. In recent months, we have performed for the Parkinson's Moving Day Walk, the Living Well with Parkinson's Symposium at the Marcus JCC, and we are preparing for an upcoming concert of music from across the pond, merging Irish, Scottish, British, and American music into one joyful and engaging concert. Singing with Parkinson's would not be possible without the generous support of the George Center Foundation. Thank you for doing your part to ensure the success of this program and to support the continued access to music therapy for individuals in the Parkinson's community.
And you can tell that video is a little outdated in that there are no masks. So that was right prior to the pandemic. And the funding source is now the Parkinsons Foundation. And we're really, really grateful to them and their support of the Parkinsons Choir. So that's how you can reach the body with music. And now you have the brain and the mind and the body all working in harmony. When you treat the whole person in harmony with neurologic music therapy, you can help them learn, you can help them heal, and you can change lives. We'd love to field any questions Melissa may have for us.
Excellent information, first and foremost. I think that, you know, as we discussed in our preview, that this is something that isn't really top of mind for a lot of people. So as we start to gather more questions, and everybody who's watching, this is a really good time to scroll down to the bottom of your screen. I see we've got a couple of questions in already. Type your questions out there and I will be happy to read them to the ladies to get your answer. But how often is it that you maybe go to a community, say an Arbor community here in Georgia, there's quite a few, and people just are not aware that this kind of therapy even exists?
Absolutely. We're often just generically referred to as the music lady, guitar ladies as we walk in. So we see most of our senior living facilities once a week. And we try to separate our memory care from our assisted living residents. We're able to target more specifically areas of memory loss when we do that. And it's a lot of advocacy. It's a lot of, we often get, you know, caretakers or engagement directors sitting in our session. And I love when they point out for me something that a resident does that they've never done before, or something that they've communicated that was accurate that they haven't heard them talk about in a long time. Because those are the moments where I get to say, and that's the therapy. It's not just fun music time, which it is. A lot of it gets to be fun music time, which is why we call it non-invasive. But it's that it works too. And so when I have caretakers and directors point out those beautiful moments, like recently, in just the last couple of weeks, I was at that same Arbor Terrace here in Crabapple, and one of the guys came in and he goes, I've never seen all of our residents in memory care sitting in a circle participating together before. And I was like, yeah, isn't it awesome? Isn't that fantastic? And it engages you in new and different ways. And like we've talked about before, it's errorless. So there's no fear in participating that you might answer wrong, or even when it comes to musicality, it's presented in such an accessible way that there's no fear of a missung note.
Absolutely. And what's wonderful with that too is not only participating in the music experience, but we see a lot more social interaction between the residents themselves. And what we know from our research and just from the engagement directors that we speak to is that this lingers. Once we leave the session, they might maintain chatting with each other in the circle, and they're seeing just more social interaction after it. So it's not just while we're there, but it's having lasting impacts.
Yeah. And in fact, our engagement directors report that they get higher volumes of traffic from family members during and right after music therapy, so that their family members can access that state of mind while it's available.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's fantastic. So, you know, you had just mentioned that this is something that, you know, you come in, you do maybe once a week, And Sharon might have a problem with that. Sharon wants to know, why isn't there more music? She says, I know of only once a week, they have someone come in for about 30 minutes. Oh, what is the normal sort of maintenance amount of time that you find people who are maybe 60, 70 years or older need?
So when you're dealing with memory loss, the answer is as much as humanly possible. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a skill like any other skill, and it's a skill that needs to be practiced. The more we're practicing it, the better they might be to recall that information or that memory. The story I shared about Gene, the fact that his wife sang that song with him every morning is what made the difference when he was finally unable to recall their names, because music accesses a different part of our brain. We're able to recall songs when we can't recall anything else. And so he was able to sing this song and still be able to participate in a family unit that he wouldn't have been able to access otherwise. So the short answer is as much as humanly possible. We know and understand that that's not always financially possible. And so we recommend at least once a week.
And it's generally for about 1 hour, those groups, once a week there. And at least once a week. We do have some facilities that have done twice a week in the past. But like Hannah said, it's always a balance as well. Just, everyone is working with budgets and finance as well. So we accommodate and do our best for all of that.
Yeah, understood. So Sharon, we have a question that is asked by someone else from Suzanne, but Sharon, you might want to listen to the answer. Suzanne asks, are there programs in other states? And then the second question is, do you work with individuals? So that might help someone like Sharon who says, hey, I like this in my community, but I might like a little bit more for myself.
Absolutely. So there are neurologic music therapists across the country. That's the good news. We are based out of Georgia. So we, as of right now, only serve groups in person. We do serve individuals out of state through telehealth. But if you visit nmtacademy.co, you can find a list of registered neurologic music therapists by state. And so that can help you find somebody who will be able to do these same techniques with you. But we absolutely offer individual services. We see residents in facility. We also see residents in our clinic if they are able to be transported. And then we also provide music therapy via telehealth. So those are all options to receive this individually. As you saw with both Jeanette and Jean, those were individual, not group services.
Yes. And furthermore, if you're struggling to find somebody in your state and you're wanting somebody for group services at home, please feel free to email us as well. We're a tight music therapy community, and we're always happy to help direct you in the right place.
Perfect. And so we'll continue on sort of in that vein of discussion with a question from Patty. Two-part question. First, how is the program handling COVID?
So we tried to handle COVID, and it turned out that COVID handled us a little bit. So we offered during COVID, we pre-recorded several music therapy sessions and provided in-depth analyses of those sessions so that engagement directors might be able to facilitate them on their own. And we also offered live versions of those. So we, just like this, we would Zoom into facilities and do our best to facilitate sessions that way. As you can imagine, with any rehabilitative service, that's not the best and most practical way to present any services. But it was a Band-Aid for what COVID was offering us. We are slowly re-entering facilities. We still are not using any materials in those facilities. It's just the therapist with their guitar and a speaker pretty much. And so we're facilitating all those things with just the residents, their hands and their bodies. And so we've made our way back into several facilities recently. Our therapists, our masks are shielded, and we make sure that we keep our distance and all of our provisions there.
Yes, and there was even some courtyard sessions that occurred outside during
until it got cold.
Yeah, until it got cold. But they would either sit on their balconies or patios or in a big courtyard, and we'd get out there with a microphone and do our best that way. So all as adaptable and flexible as we could be.
Yeah, and hey, listen, fall's coming up, so it goes from cold to hot, and then we start to get to where we can do those sessions outside, which I'm sure are probably highly entertaining for everybody involved. So adding just another element to it. So let's move to, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and with our Parkinsons Choir as well, we were able to move that completely virtually, and we got all of the individuals with Parkinson's Zooming.
It's true. We were very impressed with our participants. They made it work, and it even went from being a choir that only accessed the Metro Atlanta area to now we have participants in New York, Nevada, Florida, South Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina. We were really, really excited about COVID actually gave us an advantage there in accessibility. So in some ways we're grateful for the time where we had to be adaptive and flexible.
Sure. Yeah, I think we're all learning and are learning, adding a little sort of extra bags of tricks to our bag, if you will, due to COVID, because everybody's had to just sort of adapt. So you guys have done it apparently very, very well. Now, the second part of this question from Patty was, will you visit independent living elders since we have talked so much about our memory care and assisted living residents?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Is the short answer. Yes.
Perfect. Patty, I hope that answers your question. And Suzanne, who had a couple of questions earlier, says, yes, please put that address in the chat. Thank you. So your web address, I guess, that you had mentioned earlier, if you want to add that to the chat here at any point in time before we finish up here for the day, that would be wonderful so that they can jot that down. Also, Patty says, thank you for the answers. So Patty, thank you for being a part of the conversation. So let's look at this question from Lynette. How can adults preserve their brain with music therapy?
That's a great question.
That is a great question.
So the good news is that if you were to look at an MRI of somebody who is actively listening to music, you would see the motor cortices of the brain light up. You would see the speech cortices of the brain light up. You would see the cognitive and executive functions areas of the brain light up. And they're all doing this simultaneously, and as we like to say, in harmony. Because music is accessing all of those things. When you are listening to something that's rhythmic, that's engaging your motor system. When it has language, it's engaging your speech and your Broca's and your Wernicke's areas of your brain because you're having to process that language. It's also oral and it's cognitive and it's talking about concepts and materials that are engaging to the executive function portion of your brain. And so the good news is that you don't have to be especially musical for music to make a difference. When you are actively engaged in those processes, you're creating new neural networks, and it's due to a capacity of our brains called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is a lifelong ability of your brain to create a new pathway. And so when pathways are damaged or when they're going dark, it's important to practice creating new ones and finding new routes to that information. So an easy way is to, if you have a skill, like say it's a language skill, be active in listening to a language, listening to music in that language so that you're maintaining that in a different and connecting different areas of your brain from those motor cortex to the speech. Any way that you can associate the material that's important to you in a rhythmic and musical way will help you maintain that for a longer time.
You and I had a discussion about the origins of music therapy, and I thought that was very, very interesting. This has been going on for a very, very long time. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned yesterday, music kind of serving as medicine has been around since the beginning of time. If you go back into more ancient civilizations, the medicine man would come in and they would use musical practices for healing. Now, of course, we've grown in our science and understanding, and we're not quite practicing it in that way, but they always had this understanding of music's innate ability to reach the soul or the spirit deep down inside of someone. And so this has always been utilized throughout the ages in medical practices. And in the 1960s, after World War II, when all the veterans were coming back, they developed the first music therapy program with veterans to assist with their post-traumatic stress disorder, the PTSD. So that is when these curriculums at the undergraduate and graduate levels began to be developed for music therapy because they saw how profound an impact music had on these veterans. And so from there, this profession has really, really grown into a very strong research and evidence-based practice. And as we said earlier, as technologies have grown and we're able to visualize the brain and get images of the brain, or we're able to look at heart rate responses, et cetera. We've really come to understand how music impacts the body and the brain, and you psychologically as well. And then we've been able to do clinical studies to see, okay, what behaviorally then can that do? What are the outcomes? This is what's happening internally, so what makes it change externally as well. So it's been really a fantastic growth in our field, and we're very excited for where it's headed as well.
Yeah, and when you talk about that research, usually when you are in the midst of doing that, you're hoping to find something. So what is on the horizon, perhaps, when it comes to this type of therapy?
Boy, I think there's so many things. There's so many different areas of study that are being accessed right now.
I would optimistically say anything, because when you come down to it, neurologic music therapy is based on brain science, and everything that we do has to do with our brain. And so just the exciting news, I think, is that this is just the beginning of evidence-based practice in brain function and music. As we talked about with the MRIs lighting up, it lights up the whole brain. And so it's accessing multiple cortices that we're able to manipulate, use that neuroplasticity model to rewire it and provide us with new functionality. So like I said, optimistically, I think it's the beginning of using music to treat the whole person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very excited about where our rhythm research specifically is taking us. We're learning more and more about how the brain processes rhythm, and just how important rhythm is, not just for your motor system and those timing of movements we talked about and how to develop a motor plan, but how rhythm can be processed at a subconscious level, we're finding. So basically what that means is if there's areas of your brain that are impacted, or you've had a stroke or TBI or Alzheimer's dementia, whatever it might be, you can still process rhythm at really a spinal level and what we call a subcortical level. And you can still entrain to it. You can walk along to that beat. So it's kind of helping your body map things out, even when the brain might not be able to fully process it or understand what's happening.
And I think we've all experienced that in kind of an anecdotal way. You know, if you've ever walked down the hallway with somebody who's wearing high heels, you might have noticed that in a matter of seconds, you're walking to the same beat as them. It's because you're not processing consciously that there is an aural input that you need to affect your body towards, but your brain is doing it anyway.
I have done that. So you're absolutely right. I have absolutely done that. And it's as you said, it's subconscious. You don't even realize that you're doing it. That's so interesting. All of this is so interesting, but I'm excited what's to come in the future for this, as I know all of you ladies are as well. And I think really to close this out, we have a final question here from Patty. Are you at liberty to share pricing for the program?
Prices do vary a lot from state to state and region to region. Even amongst our own pricing levels, we differ from suburban to rural counties, just based off the kind of funding that facilities receive in those areas. So it wouldn't be very accurate to share with you what we might be charging per session.
I just want to say a big thank you to both of you ladies for taking the time to be with us, to share something that, again, isn't widely well known, I think, and perhaps should be more discussed when it comes to people in general, but definitely our seniors and those who are suffering from cognitive decline. So thank you so much, both of you, Allison Lockhart, Hannah Reinhardt, for taking the time to be with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yes.
We appreciate the time and we're grateful to do it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all.
And yes, Brenda Ritchie, I wanted to say the presentation will be available to each and every one of you who are here and who have RSVP'd for this webinar. Starting tomorrow afternoon, you will receive an email with the link to this very presentation to share, as I said, with your friends and family, or whoever you feel like might be able to benefit from this fantastic webinar here today. And for those of you who maybe just want to know where this content will be housed, you can head on over to www.seniorlivinglive.com seniorliving.com. This webinar will be there starting tomorrow, and you can check out all of the rest of our content all about senior living, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As always, everyone, we appreciate you watching Senior Living Live. Have a great day, everybody.